careful, don't step on what looks like to be glass, okay? Watch out. Welcome, my name is Brandy. I'll be your tour guide this evening. You may know that Cranberry's motto is where Texas history lives. We like to say it's where Texas history never left. Now, a couple little disclaimers before we get started. Just a reminder, this is a walking tour. It's about an hour long. I'll take you around the square with a little detour off. Not overly strenuous. But if you feel like you may not be up to it, please let me know. I'll gladly refund your money. We don't want anyone experiencing any physical discomfort this evening. A little mental discomfort perhaps, but not any physical. Also, of course, we can't guarantee that you'll see or experience anything ghostly. They don't necessarily come when we call them. But you do have my word, we don't have anything rigged. Nothing's going to jump out at you and yell boo or anything about that kind of tour. So if you do happen to see something, if it's not a trick of the imagination, it just might be real. Had some weird things happen on the tours before, especially like messing with technology. Cell phones and camera batteries can get drained or make it really hard to take a picture somehow. I've had it on 3 separate occasions so far that a person's cell phone will randomly start playing music when they're not even touching it. The third time it happened twice on the same tour to the same person, but it was a different song each time. So it actually had to change selections in the middle there. First was Shania Twain, second was Whitesnake. Just a pretty good variety, you know? Those have some good taste if you're at a party. You never know what can happen. Plus, photography is highly encouraged if you're able to. If you have anything fun showing up in your pictures, let me know. We'll post it on Facebook. We love that sort of thing. You never know who's going to photobomb you out here. We'll get started with the brief history of Cranberry itself. Cranberry was incorporated as a town in 1871. The decision to make Cranberry the county seat of Hood County was made by a small majority of the county's voters to be a 40-acre land donation made by J.F. and J. Nutt and Thomas Lambert. We'll learn about the Nutt family in just one moment. Cranberry was named after General Hiram Bronson Cranberry. He was Brigadier General of the Confederate Army under command of General John Bell Hood, which gave Hood County its name. Cranberry and General Pat Cleburne were killed at the Battle of Franklin in 1864. He was buried there in Tennessee till 1893 when his body was brought here to the city cemetery. At that time, the procession carried his body up Crockett Street right here on its way up to his new home. Now, in the early days of Cranberry, the town wasn't necessarily the nice family-friendly town that we have today. At one point, there were at least 7 saloons just along the square. We were a party town. That ended after 1905 when Carrie Nation came to town. She was a prominent figure in the Prohibition and Temperance movement, working to ban the use of alcohol. She had her famous acts at home this time, but she gathered the women of the town together into the Christian Women's Temperance League. They worked together to clean up the town and eventually shut down the saloons. Now, there are several historical figures associated with Cranberry, some of whom I may even meet today. But there's some, while not really directly related to the square, I'd be remiss in talking about Cranberry without mentioning them. In the 1850s, the area was home to the family of Alamo hero David Crockett. His widow Elizabeth and their family settled in this area. Elizabeth is now buried in the nearby Athens Cemetery, where her gravesite marks the smallest state park in Texas. Just her grave, not the cemetery, is the state park. It's even got a little fence around it and everything. Wouldn't recommend camping there, though. It's kind of cramped, not very good fishing. Now, their grandson, Ashley Crockett, gained some local fame in the 1870s by becoming one of the first newspaper publishers in the area. In fact, the Hood County News that we have today is a direct descendant of the paper that Ashley Crockett ran. The Crockett family was such major players in developing the town that, again, Crockett Street is named here in the north. There's something interesting to note about our clock tower. That is a Set Thomas hand-wound mechanism. The only 2 Set Thomas hand-wound clock towers still operating in the world. Can anyone guess what the second one might be? And no, it's not Back to the Future again. Y'all know? London, Big Ben. We have a direct link to the most famous clock tower in the world. In fact, during the Millennium Celebration, CNN had a correspondent in each time zone, so you'd ring in the new year over and over again. For Central Time, they were here in Cranberry. They had a correspondent at Big Ben. They wanted someone at the sister clock as well. Now, we're already at our first destination of the evening. This here is the J.F. and J. Nutt building. It was built in 1893 for 2 blind brothers, Jesse and Jacob Nutt. They established a mercantile business in this area in 1866 in a log cabin building with a wagon yard in the back, hence the wagon yard that's back there now. Like I mentioned earlier, it was their land donation that made the town possible. Like I said, this building was built in 1893. The local contractor, Jim Warren, it housed 3 generations of the Nutt family, with the Nutt Hotel moving in here around 1910. The plaque says 1919 before the research now points to being closer to 1910. In the 1960s, Mary Lou Watkins, a direct descendant of the Nutt family, opened a restaurant right here. That's her ringing her bell across the street over there. That was part of the restaurant's gimmick. Y'all wore period garb. When she finished cooking at the end of the day, came outside, ringing her bell, letting everyone know that supper was on the table. She was a major part of the revitalization campaign of the downtown square in the 1960s. I really can't overstate her accomplishment. She pretty much single-handedly repurposed the square. She's the reason we have so many historical markers. She's the reason why the square itself is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. She's basically the reason why Granbury is what it is today. I opened the Coles restaurant in 1998, passed away in 2001, but she never really learned. My mother and I used to work here as servers at another restaurant before it closed down just a few years ago. We encountered Mary Lou almost on a daily basis. She's actually our inspiration for starting the tour. I'd say even after her death, she's still helping Granbury business prosper. Counter doors would open by themselves and just shut them back. Okay, Mary Lou, we get them, we know you're here. Back door will be heard slamming, footsteps on the floor, faucets turning on and off. A few times my mother even saw a lady in a long dress and a bun walking upstairs and around the upstairs again. One day my mother's in the back dining room doing some training with another employee. She's the only female in the building at the time. All of a sudden, they both hear women's laughter coming from the front. They think, uh-oh, someone's up front waiting to be seated, waiting for the door open. People rushing in front to greet the party, but there's no one up there waiting for us. My mother and I are opening up one morning, getting ready for a party upstairs. Realized we needed a second tablecloth. I go down to the linen closet to get it. She says, oh, I left it unlocked. You don't need to worry about it. Get down there, I turn the knob, lock. Then I get the key, I unlock it, get the cloth, lock it back, testing the knob to make sure it's secure. A little later, I ask her, would you mind getting me some napkins out of the closet? I locked it back, please. She goes back and says, sure you locked it? Because it was unlocked when I got it there. So I really like to have a lot of fun with us over here. Now that hotel room 4 seems to get a lot of activity, me and the Mary Lou walk into it. We have activity elsewhere, but room 4 seems to be the hub. We had a couple ladies staying there one evening, around 4:30 in the morning. One of them gets woken up to someone very firmly shaking her shoulder. Her friend is still asleep next to her, so it's obviously not her. She wakes her friend up, they're laying there trying to figure out what's going on. And all of a sudden, pardon.
Excuse me.
You'll see them too, right? We're ghosts. Who said that? So she wakes her friend up, they're laying there trying to figure out what's going on. And all of a sudden the room gets ice cold and they hear knocking all over the walls. They think, okay, something's definitely wanting us to stay up tonight because we're not going back to sleep anytime soon. We're doing these tours when any lady comes out. Oh, I know this place is haunted. I was just in my hotel room. Someone knocked on the window. As you can see, all the rooms are on the second story. So who's knocking on those windows? Paul Bunyan? That's a different letter. Now, a while back, there's a couple staying there in room 4 along with their little 3-year-old daughter. All of a sudden, the little girl just starts talking away. And this is who you talk to. Wonderful. Even more recently, I had a couple ladies come on our tour, and they were staying there in room 4, specifically wanting to try to make contact. They had their room keys tossed on the dresser. They're sitting on the bed chatting. They said, Mary Lou, love this room. It's beautiful. Hey, if you're here, can you give us some sort of a sign? As soon as they say this, the room keys start getting dragged across the top of the dresser. So it's a pretty good immediate sign for them right now. So I think that Mary Lou is still here taking care of her guests, always the hostess. So don't worry if ever do want to stay here. Once we're done with the renovations, can't wait to see what that's stirring up. But she is friendly. I know she likes to turn the ceiling fans on if she thinks you're not being comfortable enough, that sort of thing. Just making sure you're having fun. Now we're going to head on to what many consider to be our creepiest destination on the tour, one you probably wouldn't want to spend the night in, even if it wasn't haunted.
Twixie taking our first little ghost tour. Come on.
You can do it, Twixie.
Yeah.
Come on, baby. So this here is a historic historic Hood County jailhouse. It was built in 1885 to succeed the 1873 log jail. It was in use up until 1978 when a new center was built. This building was still housing inmates in the late 1970s. I actually had a man on a tour a while back said he spent some time in this jail when he was younger. He didn't say what for, he let out the juicy stuff, but he said it worked. He didn't mess up after that. You see this tall front section right behind me here, the one with the ghosty in the window. That was built to accommodate hangings so they wouldn't have to use the tree on the hill anymore. It never got any use. No executions actually took place in here. That's not to say no one was ever killed inside the jail, of course. It would happen from time to time. Sheriff would go upstairs to check on the inmates and find one of them had killed himself in some manner. This is a museum open to the public during the day on weekends. I highly recommend you checking it out if you get the chance. Very fun, creepy feeling in here. The bottom floor is the museum with pieces and artifacts from around Hood County. The upstairs floor is the actual jail cells. Lots of rusted iron, graffiti from the past inmates all over the walls. It's a really neat feeling up there if you like creepy stuff like I do. So of course a lot of activity's been experienced in here. Bunks have been heard slamming down on the floor, footsteps on the stairs. One time a tour guide of the jail took a group upstairs and immediately came right back down, leaving her group completely alone up there without a host. She said, I felt something up there and I am not going back. I promise we'll enter that jail tonight on this tour though. At least I'll try not to. If you see me running, try to keep up. And I'm probably running toward us and get your camera, this is great. A ghost is often heard settling down in a corner of the room down here. We heard walking around, down the stairs, around the floor. Then he'll hunker down in this one particular corner. Except one time, he decided to leave his corner so he could sit on a lady's lap while she was trying to work. She said she felt as if her entire body was enveloped by a thick, misty cloud. A gifted person came in to speak with him. She's an automatic writer, one who communicates with spirits by literally writing down what they're telling her. He told her that he's harmless. He's a... Is it a ghost? I don't see you. Is it a ghost? Get it. He told her that he's harmless. He's a Native American named Joe who was separated from his tribe as they were wandering this part of Texas. He asked him to come downstairs. They said as soon as he did, they could all immediately feel his presence. They concluded that Joe's just a lonely spirit, misses his tribe, not a little company. Joe's been getting quite a bit of company lately. This has become a very popular location for ghost hunting groups, myself included. My mother and I are members of a group called Research and Investigation of the Paranormal, or RIP. We came in here to do an investigation, got some pretty interesting findings. On the first floor in the back room, they have a piano on display. We got a picture of some odd white lights coming up from the keyboard. When you do an investigation, you always want to make sure to debunk. You don't get something weird and just say, oh, it's a ghost and leave it at that. Really try to duplicate it, make sure it's not something easily explained away. So we took several different pictures in that exact same location, but the lights didn't show up in any other picture. So we can effectively rule out glare, flash, or any other easily explained phenomenon. We also got a couple interesting audio recordings. One is very clearly of a man groaning in the background. Oh, more of a growl, really. Another one sounds like a woman mumbling, really muffled and hard to hear. And you hear bong, like the closing of a cell door. And see, when you really clean it up and listen hard, it sounds like the woman is saying, leave, bong. I don't know who she's talking to, hopefully not us. We didn't mean any harm. She probably is talking to us, though. We tend to irritate them sometimes. All I know is whoever's here, Joe or the lady or anyone else, know a lot of others have been documented by other groups coming in. There's no telling who's coming in and out here any given moment, really. I hope they did enjoy our company, doing things too interesting for us on the tour tour. Now we're heading up around the corner. Please watch your steps as we go. There's some uneven pavement and some overgrown shrubbery. And at one point we'll probably have to walk into the street itself because there's one section of the sidewalk that when it rains enough, it's just going to take the shoe right off your foot and mud on there. So please keep a very close eye on where you're stepping. We have enough ghosts on our tour. We don't need to add any more to it.
We had fun watching.
You were making a friend over there, huh? Someone was talking to you. Now this house is still a private residence, so I'm going to try to talk a little bit lower in case they happen to be home. They know we do the tours, but I try to avoid freaking him out if I can help it. This here is the Aston House. It was built in 1905 for Andy Aston and his wife, Dorothy Dolly Fidlin. Andy Aston was co-owner of the Aston Landers Saloon, which is now the Arts and Letters bookstore on the other side of where we started our tour. This house was built because Dolly's parents were not too happy at the thought of how their daughter's fiance earned his living being a saloon owner. So we told him, okay, I promise to build your daughter the prettiest house in Granbury if you promise to stop bothering me about the way I make an income. So even back in 1905, people are just trying to deal with their in-laws. Apparently Dolly still lives here. People that have lived here before said they'd be laying in bed at night. They'll hear the pots and pans moving around in the kitchen, the trash can rolling around outside. Children that have lived here said they've actually seen a lady checking in on them at night as they lay in bed. So Dolly's still a mother, cooking and cleaning and tending to the children. Another possible ghostly resident was a tenant of a Mrs. Riley who had bought the house and rented out rooms. Children have seen a gentleman in a dark suit from time to time. One time a little girl who used to live here went up to her mother and said, I can't tell if he's happy or sad. And I says, who are you talking about? She says, the man that's sitting on my toy chest. Well, apparently this little girl loved singing to her guests. She'd often be heard just singing along in her room to whoever was listening. One evening, her father's walking down the hall and he hears her singing. He thinks, wow, you know, my daughter just has the most beautiful singing voice. But then it hits him. Wait a minute. I'm the only one in the house right now. Not too sure who that was singing, but I guess someone got entertained in it. One evening, another former resident is inside the house by herself. Her husband's at work. Becomes very frightened with the feeling she's getting. A friend of hers that understood the odd circumstances of the house and had advised her, if you ever become scared inside the house, simply say out loud, if you mean us harm, I command you to leave. If you mean us no harm, you may stay. So she says this, and immediately after, a knocking starts at the back of the house, moving slowly forward towards her. Of course, this really scares her. She calls her husband at work. Her husband hears the knocking over the phone and rushes right home to be with her. So sitting there listening as the knocking moves slowly from the back to the front. When all of a sudden, as soon as the knocking reaches the front door, it disappears altogether. We'll continue on. Once again, please watch your step, of course.
Nice looking house. Come on, Twixie. Gotta keep up. Found some more trash to pick up. What was that?
here is the Langdon Center. It's used for cultural exhibits, art exhibits, music lessons. This is known as the A.P. Gordon House. In the early days of Granbury, this was home to A.P. Gordon and his family. Mr. Gordon owned the saloon and mercantile store. That's now the Square Cafe, which we'll learn more about in one moment. Mr. Gordon plays another role in these stories later on. People believe that Mr. Gordon and his 5-year-old granddaughter named Audrey still live here inside the house. People have seen a gentleman from time to time in a long sleeved white blouse and black slacks. They get the feeling of someone standing right behind them. They'll turn to look, catch him out of the corner of their eye. By the time they'll be all the way turned around, he'll be gone. They also say sometimes they'll be upstairs in the office. They'll hear the front door open and close and footsteps on the stairs. So they're waiting to see who's coming up to visit them. But the footsteps don't get past the second or third stair, and they don't hear them walking back out. They have no idea who's coming up to visit. It's a very creaky door and very creaky stairs. So you would definitely hear it if they walked back out. Now Audrey loves to play with the children and teenagers that come in. Luckily we have one on the tour tonight. Maybe she'll come play with us. They had a group of 12 to 15-year-olds taking music lessons once a week. She loved playing with them every chance she got. They would often hear a little girl laughing from the other room. Sometimes she would play with the locks on the doors, locking them in or out. Not a scary or trapped way, but ha-ha, I'm playing a joke on you. You know, little girl, she wants attention. They'd always laugh and say, you'll never guess what Audrey did to us this week. We came here with RIP to do a couple investigations. Got some really great findings. That's why this is one of my favorite places. The group said this is one of the most active locations we've ever investigated. We came in here taking EVP recordings, or electronic voice phenomena. If you're not familiar with ghost hunting techniques, EVP is one of the most common ways of searching for a ghost. A lot of times if a ghost is talking to you, you can't hear what they're saying with your naked ear. So you bring in a recording device, record the air, ask questions, say comments, try to provoke a response. Then you play it back, preferably with a program, let you clean it up and hear really well. So you tell, okay, that was my conversation, but that wasn't there before. We came in doing what we call sweeps. A sweep is when we actually send a group of 2, 3, 4 people in to try to get the results, while the rest stay back, take a break, watch the monitors, whatever. You don't want an entire group of 20-something ghost hunters going into the building at the same time, stomping around, talking, making noise. It'll mess up your findings. You keep the group small and cycle them throughout the night. The figure since Audrey likes the music lessons, and she has been known to play the piano herself from time to time. They'll be upstairs, no one's downstairs, yet the piano will start playing somehow. We figured she would enjoy some music. She brought a guitar. Myself, a boy named Brandon, and a boy named Tyler went in to do our first ever music sweep. Brandon is sitting there playing the guitar, while Tyler and I are singing and goofing around, trying to have fun and draw her out. At one point, Brandon stops playing the guitar to hand Tyler a flashlight. At this point on the recording, we got a little girl saying, "Don't stop playing, Brandon." Later on, my mother and Greg and James, the 2 co-founders of the group, are inside doing a sweep. They all 3 very clearly heard a little girl laughing from the other room. Then Greg asked, "Hey, Audrey, do you like it when they play the piano in here?" On the recording, we got, "Yeah." We brought a little boy with us named Zachary, a little 10-year-old junior investigator, loves these things. Figure bring a child with us, maybe that'll help draw her out. So Greg's telling them, "Okay, Zachary, really keep quiet and listen hard. See if Audrey's trying to say something to you." At this point on the recording, we got, "I don't like boys." Because they got cooties. Apparently she didn't mind them too much though, so don't worry guys, you're all perfectly safe. Grab on your cootie shut and try to be good. Because later on, Zachary's sitting at the piano trying to learn how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb. Really getting frustrated he can't get it right. Finally, he manages to plunk out just the right tune. As soon as he does, very clearly on the recording, we got, "Yay!" So she may not like boys, but at least she's still a good sport cheering on. On the second investigation we did, among the many pieces of evidence we got, my personal favorite one, my mother asked, "Do you like when the ghost tours come by? Do you like playing with the people on the tours?" And again we got, "Yeah." So it's nice, I'm a fan. I like it when they like us back, helps us out. Speaking of, something did happen to us on a tour here a while back. Lady calls back the next day all excited. I got something. As I was walking away from the building, she hangs back to snap some pictures. This is a cell phone camera, so it's no fancy ghost hunting technology. She decides to rejoin the group, so she calls out, "Bye, Audrey," and then snaps one last picture. This is the picture she gets.
Okay. Nice.
This is in that center window right there, the one that's got the direct lines over it.
Maybe she'll open it and say hello to us. What do you think, Twixie? Do you want to see a ghost?
You want to see? He's like, I see plenty of them right now. You just don't know. So like I said, this is a cell phone picture. So fancy technology is nice, but they want to be seen, they'll let you know. That's why I love this place so much, because Audrey's definitely still here. Loves playing with her guests and getting attention, even from the smelling old boys. We actually got a really cool one just a few weeks ago, very recently on a tour here. It's on our Facebook page. You'll have to check it out. It's fairly close to the top. It's pretty easy to find. But it's taken in this side window right here. And in the picture, you can clearly see there's the outline of a man's back. It's his reflection. You know, he's a guest on the tour. He's standing in front of the window. But the man's face that you can very clearly see peeking out over his shoulder was not one of the guests on the tour. So you'll check that on our Facebook page. Now please watch your steps to come up off the porch here, of course. And you're right.
Twixie's being good.
Not the first time I've done that. You got puppy teeth. Where y'all from? Mexico. We're going there next month for our anniversary. Oh, okay. It's gonna be our 10th, so we'll be able to see it. We're going to Santa Fe. So it's been on my bucket list to go to Meow. So.
Go ahead, yes. Get a good picture of the building. Good. Nice big house.
Cafe, formerly known as the Nutshell Eatery and Bakery. In the early days of Granbury, this, along with St. Helens next door, one large saloon and mercantile store owned by A.P. Gordon, whose house we were just at. There's actually two resident spirits in here. One of which you can even see on the wall right here. She's kind of right over here in this mural. She's leaning up against the piano, wearing a long red dress. In the early days of Granbury, when the bottom part was a saloon, the upstairs area was rumored to be a gentleman's area where men could find company for the evening to families. But people believe that this lady in red was the proprietor of that establishment. Children have seen her quite often. One time a lady and her young son came in. The lady goes up to the counter to order. The son hangs back, pointing at the staircase saying, "Why is no one helping her?" They say, "Who are you talking about?" He says, "That lady in the red dress." One morning, an employee came in to open up, feels a rush of cold air go by her, then turns to face the grill, getting that started, when all of a sudden silverware goes flying behind her head. Later on, she's posing after credit card machines. She actually sees a white apparition go by, feels a rush of cold air again. Now the lady in red must like to look out the windows out the front of the stairs here. The employee is closing up one day, closes and locks the shutters, comes downstairs, looks up, shutters are open again, just to go back and relock. Of course, now it's a private residence up there. I can't vouch if they should be open anymore or not, and they use curtains and that. Now, this is actually the second mural in here. They just recently redid it, but there was a former mural in here for several years, and she was depicted in that mural as well. Well, one in the former muralist decided to call it a night, so she goes to put her paintbrushes away, so she can't find her paintbrushes anywhere. She's searching all over, because why would someone steal 25 used paintbrushes? She finally gives up, goes home, comes back the next day. They are later discovered, sticking upside down, buried bristles first in the dirt of the ficus tree plant out front, with only about a quarter of each handle showing. You know, this is commentary on how she's being depicted in the mural, and how she's definitely very moody, likes things the way she likes them. Well, pitchy pissy fit if she doesn't get her way, hence the flying silverware thing. So I'm sure she's trying to tell us something. Now there's one more very famous ghostly resident living in here, but he's more well known to the floor him.
Opera house.
This was nice for me. And this here is the Granbury Opera House, home to the most famous haunting in Granbury. Familiar with Granbury ghost stories, you've heard of this one. Featured on Ghost Lab on the Discovery Channel, as well as any other number of TV shows and publications. Legend has it that John Wilkes Booth, the assassin of President Lincoln, was not killed in 1865. It was another man instead. He escaped, moved here under the name of John St. Helen, where he tended bar. Of course, it's up for debate as to whether this man actually was John Wilkes Booth, so please don't put this on a history paper and then blame me for getting it wrong. But there are some interesting points to consider. His boss, A.P. Gordon, noted that St. Helen was always a very sober man, never drank to excess, always held his liquor well, except for on the evening of the anniversary of Lincoln's assassination, St. Helen was found completely falling down, slobbering drunk. Maybe he had a guilty conscience about something. St. Helen was also known for walking with a limp. Sorry, go stop it. I like doing these tours, I remember something. So, he was known for walking with a limp, as if his leg had been broken in the past. Booth did break his leg when he jumped from the balcony after killing Lincoln. And St. Helen was known for teaching theater to the school children, and for randomly orating and quoting Shakespeare, and of course Booth was an actor. St. Helen fell seriously ill one day, was laying on what he believed to be his deathbed, decided to confess to A.P. Gordon's brother, F.J. Gordon, alongside a Memphis attorney named Dennis L. Bates, who happens to be the grandfather of actress Kathy Bates, by the way. How's that for a random connection for you right there? Some 6 degrees of Granbury over here. We'll find Kevin Bacon one of these days. He confessed to both of them that he was John Wilkes Booth. He went so far as to tell F.J. Gordon where he had hidden the murder weapon. Gordon followed his instructions, easily recovered the weapon, still reportedly to this day in the hands of the Gordon family in a safe in San Antonio. St. Helen recovered from his illness, realized what he'd done, oops, let the cat out of the bag, and quickly fled the town. Years later, in a town named Enid, Oklahoma, a man named David George committed suicide after having confessed to people that he was John Wilkes Booth. The body of David George was then 1970s, the mummy mysteriously disappeared. To this day, we have no idea what has happened to that mummy. You can see pictures of it online that people go and research John Wilkes Booth, David George mummy, that sort of thing. It's kind of neat to see if you're morbid like I am, just kind of research. So of course a lot of activity's been experienced in there. So Ghost Lab came in to investigate, taking their EVP recordings, really bad and grading them. We know who you are, you coward, tell us who you are. You play it back, get a very clear recording of a man saying, yes, I'm John Wilkes Booth. Now I actually spoke with Brad King of Ghost Lab a while back, the way that audio you hear on the show is a little bit altered. The original audio they got was, yes, I'm John Wilkes Booth. You, something I can't repeat in front of polite company, because it's a family. So of course the Discovery Channel is more of a family-friendly network. Pick up the last two words off, you get the gist of it. But I like that added flavor. It gives a whole new attitude to what he's saying there, right? Who would have thought a presidential assassin would be such a haughty man? Continue.
Get down the money.
Where we heading? Across the street again?
Popular stories on our tour. People believe that here at what was Market on the Square, which is now Oz, and all the way down here was Silver Saddle Saloon, they believe this whole area is haunted by a little faceless girl. The story is in the early 1900s, a circus came to town and accidentally left this little girl behind. She wound up wandering the streets along this way, and now she's still here. Another version of the story suggests she was watching the circus parade pass from an upstairs window when she fell from the window, and again, she's still here. Either way, it's believed that a circus was involved in some way and things didn't wind up going so well. Well, back the store called Books on the Square used to be where Silver Saddle Saloon is now. At that time, they had a toy section in the back with a display tray full of hanging stuffed monkeys. You know, the kind that when you squeeze it goes, ee, lets out a horrible shriek. One evening, an employee is closing up. He's all alone in the store. The doors are locked. He's up at the front register reconciling the books. When all of a sudden, from the back of the store, he hears every single one of the monkeys on the monkey tree start screaming all at once. That also happened to be the last time he told his boss he would ever work by himself after dark. However, that is not why this is everyone's favorite story. Everyone's favorite story happened right here where Oz is now. Back in the 1980s, they had a photo booth in there. One of the old-timey kind, you could dress up as a saloon girl or a cowboy. They come in one morning to open up and find that the booth was a bit in disarray. Camera's on its lowest setting on the tripod, which no one would have ever set it at. Made the camera very unstable. It's an expensive camera, you didn't want to mess with it. The antique chair had been moved, and there was a blue dress draped across the chair. This is all very odd. Every person that had a key to the building is inside the building at that same time, but not a single one of them has any clue as to what could have happened the night before. So they're tidying up, getting ready to open, still puzzling over what's going on, when all of a sudden, one of them discovers a photograph in the wastebasket basket nearby. As you can see, this is the chair that had been moved. This is the blue dress that was draped across the chair. However, the flowers and the bow were nowhere to be seen. They never had them in the store and didn't after that, so I don't know if she brought them with her and took them back or what. And as you can see, you can make out pretty much every detail in this picture except for her face. She actually has been spotted by a couple people so far that I know of. They tend to describe her as having some sort of a white veil material covering her face, so they can't make out the details. Of course, the jury is still out as to why she has no face. Most common theories are she was with the circus, maybe she had some sort of disfigurement. Or if she fell while watching the circus, maybe that's where she landed. Anyway, it's all just theory. We really have no idea what actually happened to her. She was shy. Oh, I want to see you take that one on, yeah. You probably win. They're usually pretty shy. That's why I love this place. That's why this is everyone's favorite story. Pardon me. That's why this is everyone's favorite story. Because how many times do you get a ghost leaving a picture of themselves behind for your find? It makes my job easier. First ever ghost selfie that I know. Or Soulfie, as I like to call it. I'll find out picture.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Little dog's going, I can take her. I can take her. Little dog.
That's about right.
The motorcycles too?
You're about to drop a hot new album.
So this here is the V.M. Estes building here on the corner. Now this was built in 1893 by Mr. Estes. He was a prominent figure in town, well-respected lawyer, county judge, and district attorney. People believe that Mr. Estes is still here as well. Before this was Farina's, it was two separate clothing stores, Dakota's Cabin in the two-story section closest to us right here, and the Clothes Horse in the single-story section next door by the patio. An employee of the Clothes Horse was working up front one day, all alone in the store, when all of a sudden from the back sales section she hears the very distinct sound of clothes being separated on the rack. She goes back to thinking maybe someone's come in that she didn't notice, and of course there's no one back there. However, the clothes were separated on the rack when she got there. You also say sometimes I would hear little children running around upstairs. However, that's the single-story section. There is no upstairs. No one should be running around up there. Here, what was Dakota's Cabin? The same items would fall off shelves. Suitcases would be heard rolling around on the floor. One time the owner told me she had a deck of Texas playing cards for sale up by the front counter. She comes in one morning to discover they are laying stacked perfectly on top of each other on the floor in the back of the store. None of her employees admitted to having doings, so I guess Mr. Estes was entertaining some friends that evening. Something actually happened to my mother and myself in preparation for the tours here. The weekend before we started the tours, we came around on the square going door to door, letting everyone know what we were doing. I walk in here to Dakota's cabin up to the front counter. Tell the lady, starting next weekend, every Friday and Saturday evening, we'll be doing ghost tours on the square. As soon as I say this, a cowboy boot on display on the sidewall flies off the wall and lands about 8 feet away from where it originally sat. There's no one in that corner to have pushed it or thrown it. There's no way it could have fallen and landed that far away on its own. Lady laughs and says, "Shh, there's our ghost right there." People up front, they're calling their friends in the back of the store. "You gotta come see this, she's talking about a ghost tour and a boot just flew off the wall." They were taking pictures of the boot, they were loving it. So I think that it's Mr. Estes voicing his approval of the tour, giving us a little added promotion. We'll take a wait and get it right, every little bit helps. Not just down this road about half a mile, a little too far to walk to tonight, is the city cemetery. There's some famous residents buried out there, including General Granberry, alongside a marker for his wife, who's unfortunately not with him. She's in an unmarked grave in Alabama. Also a family of Ashley Crockett, minus Elizabeth, of course, who's out and active. There's one more very famous resident of the cemetery, if you believe the tale. History tells us that notorious bandit Jesse James was killed in 1882 by a member of his own gang and buried in Missouri. How a local legend tells us it was another member of his gang named Charlie Bigelow killed him instead. He escaped, moved here, and worked the railroads in the 1880s under the name J. Frank Dalton. This was a happening place to be. If you got killed somewhere else, you wanted to show up here later on and get to the medal. Legend also tells us he loved the town so much he moved back here with his grandson at 103 years old because he wished to die and be buried in the town where he had met the woman with whom he had fallen in love. Hood County Sheriff at the time, Warren Baker, befriended this man. After the man's death, he wrote an article for the Hood County News detailing the post-mortem examination he presided over. He claims he personally witnessed the scars of 32 bullet wounds in this man's body and a rope burn scar on his neck. So if this wasn't Jesse James, it was definitely someone that had a pretty rough life otherwise. Sheriff Baker went so far as to put in writing in this article. He personally believes... Another guy's
There's Killer. Yep. Come on, Pepper.
You can get along, it's okay. She's a good girl too. So even if it wasn't Jesse James, it was definitely someone that had a pretty rough life otherwise. Sheriff Baker went so far as to put in writing in this article, he personally believed this was Jesse James, who died here in Granbury in 1951. Even his headstone here reads, supposedly killed in 1882. You never know what you'll see when you visit his grave. People love leaving tokens behind. Sometimes you'll see bullets. Sometimes you'll see Jack Daniels. That usually doesn't last very long out there. What you will always see is lots of pennies and coins. Apparently this is common custom that friends of the deceased place pennies on a person's headstone as a way of trying to help pay their way into heaven, as the person was such a scoundrel in life they need a little extra help. So hopefully Jesse James got all the help he needed. Jesse James is actually buried in 3 different locations. Here, Missouri, and Canton, Texas for some reason. Everyone loves a bad boy, we all let her make it. The other 2 locations of the headstones are paid for by the tourism department and the Chamber of Commerce. His headstone here is reportedly paid for by Jesse James's descendants. So even his own family believes we just might have the right one here. Continue on. I'm about to touch your friend again.
Go out on the road. Go out on the road, dear. Twixie ain't scared.
Well, this brings us to the end of our tour. I want to thank you all so much for joining me tonight. You can check us out online, granburytours.com. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/granburyghosts, plural. Everyone forgets the S, but we've got more than one. We keep updating on all of our goings on, including information on my book called Haunted Granbury, released by Arcadia Publishing. It talks about the stories we talked about tonight, but a little more in depth. To my own personal ghost hunting experiences, interviewing eyewitnesses, so it's not just a rehash of the tour. I read some of my recycled jokes, so sorry about that. I do have a couple with me tonight if you'd like to purchase for $22, and I'll happily sign them for you. They're also available right here at Arts and Letters Bookstore. I'm actually working there tomorrow from 11 to 5, so if you want to come say hi to me then, you can pick me up at that time too, and dogs are welcome. Also online, Amazon, all major online retail outlets, also at Target up in Weatherford. I also have a new book coming out next month, August 2nd, from the same publishing company called The Ghostly Tales of Granbury. And it's going to be an adaptation of Haunted Granbury for the middle grade readers, so the age 9 to 12ish. So it'll be a great little Halloween treat for the kids in your life. We have an event coming up in September that we're putting on. The last week in September, September 25th and 26th, called Spooky Spectacle 2021. We have Lake Granbury Conference Center right down there on Pearl Street. It's going to be a whole kickoff to the Halloween season. We're going to have ghost hunters and horror and sci-fi and cosplay and fantasy and all that awesome nerdy stuff that we love. Thank Comic-Con with ghost hunters. Our special celebrity guest will be Kat Cressida. She's a well-known voice actress, best known for portraying the bride in Disney's Haunted Mansion attractions at the theme parks. She's also Dee Dee in Dexter's Laboratory, all kinds of cartoons and video games. It's just $5 at the door to get in. You won't want to miss this awesome event. I have cards if you want to take one home, stick it on your fridge so you don't forget. Now we have a treat of saying thank you for joining us on our tour this evening. So no one can say they didn't see a ghost on our tour.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Just
And for Twixie.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can we take a picture with you?
Of course.
Twixie. Twixie. Look what they gave you.
I'm gonna pick up Twixie and stand next to her. Say goodbye to everybody for. Seriously.
That's brilliant.
Go
That's
ahead.
my idea too.
She makes them herself.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
What kind? Is she a Doberman? Or Doberman? She's a Chihuahua. It looks like she got some Doberman Pinscher markings.
Say bye, Twixie.
Alrighty. Thanks for joining us on Twixie's Misadventures, our ghost tour of Granbury. Everybody have a good evening.